tell people as they're coming into an area, why are we only doing it on 16th Street, not on the 12th? I think we should have it on both the north and the south end.
We did talk about that, and the primary concern was the difference in speed limits between 16th and Stratford. I don't think you have that difference coming from 12th. You're coming out of a residential area that also has a 25-mile-per-hour speed limit.
But and just as Soren said, most people would understand that. We've had numerous complaints about people speeding through Orlando because it's the only outside of Hope. I'm just wondering if that might not help calm some of that stuff down in Orlando.
I think the basic premise we take with speed limits is what I just said a minute ago. I think it's a fundamental thing that people should understand that inside the city, speed limit is 25 unless posted otherwise. So, I mean, we could put up a massive amount of 25-mile-an-hour speed limit signs within the community, but we don't do it unless, as I say, we've had a certain amount of complaints, and we've gone out and verified it, that the speeds are in fact higher. What I would suggest, Mike, is for right now, accept the recommendation here, then next Wednesday, raise that question, okay, in the context of what you're going to be dealing with next week.
That's fine. It's just a simple question.
But I think next Wednesday would be a better time to raise that question. It's an interesting question in lieu of what the state regulations now are that were adopted several years ago. And it causes some real difficulties with how we establish speed limits in the city and how we enforce them. Required to hold a public hearing. You are required to adopt this by ordinance, but in the past, we have normally used the public hearing process at the council level. I think there's been a general feeling that City Council wanted to be able to hear from the owners of the properties as to any pros or cons that they may have. I will tell you this, we have had very little feedback through those prior public hearings. That is a concern that's been expressed by the study committee. So what we're recommending, instead of placing that ordinance this evening on first reading, we're recommending that you accept the report from the study committee, and secondly, that you set a public hearing for the next council meeting, after which time you would then determine whether or not you're going to place the ordinance on first reading. So tonight, say you would accept the report, you would set a public hearing for the next council meeting, and after that you could then determine whether or not you want to place it on first reading, and then it would take one more reading, and then the 21 days after that it would become effective. The study committee has recommended, and we have done this, I believe, on a couple of other occasions associated with historic districts. We've also done it a couple of times, I think, when we've had some rezoning issues. That is, we have placed a moratorium on approving any building permits for that area until such time a decision is made by the City Council. I believe the resolution has a 6 months, does it still have a 6 months provision in it?
Or until the council would approve or reject the ordinance.
So at most it would be for 6 months, but I believe this decision, council is going to decide one way or the other within the next couple of council meetings. So there's no way this moratorium would last 6 months, but I suppose something could come up where this thing gets more complicated than what perhaps we envision at this time. So that is the recommendation. The attorney has revised the resolution slightly from what you had in your packet, basically to support the basis for why you're putting the moratorium on. And with that, I don't know, Phil, do you have anything? I think we can wait for the public hearing to make any other presentation. You pretty much got that last week. And I don't know, Andy, if there's anything you want to comment at this point about the moratorium. And that's a rather, we don't do that very often. But in this particular case, there was a concern as to whether somebody would go in and try to make changes to those homes that would be significant. This only applies to the exterior. It does not apply to the interior of the homes.
Yeah, too often I think we've seen some instances where these districts, if they are set up, we get into a beat the clock type permits are pulled, knowing that there may be this designation. So all of the moratorium does is it just puts in place, you know, a status quo until you make your decision on whether or not you're going to expand the district.
Are there any pulled at this point?
Pardon me?
Are there any pulled at this point?
I do not believe
I'm
so.
not aware of any exterior.
See, are there any outstanding building permits? I don't think so.
They would
We can
only-
certainly check that before next Wednesday. It's virtually impossible because of the way that the tax structure is set up. You know, most tax issues, unless you're enabled by state legislation, you normally cannot do it. You know, part of that is because the equity factor that's involved in taxes. Now, you can raise all kinds of questions about equity with these things, but again, if there is legislation on the book that allows you to do it, you can do it. Doesn't mean you have to do it, although, as I told you on this one, you don't have much choice on this one either, because these companies are going to build here. You're going to have to grant these Renaissance zones. You know, we said that with both JCS and with this one, because it was a precondition of the state, and quite frankly, it was also a precondition of the federal dollars, the stimulus money that was put into both of these companies, that there would also be these local tax incentives granted.
Appreciate that.
Well, the other
That
thing-
helps, because I think, generally speaking, people want to know, well, why can't you do it for this? Or why can't, if you're going to do it for JCS
Well,
or LG, why can't we do small business a favor?
I can
And-
tell you, I sat with one of our major companies in this town right after the time we were doing the JCS, and basically said, you know, I want to make sure we get everything they're getting. And I said, I'm sorry, but it's not available to you. You know, and we don't have the luxury of giving those. And you have to understand what's here in a residence zone. It's much more than property taxes. It is also the Michigan business tax and a number of other, the state income tax and all that kind of good stuff that is wrapped into one big package. Which is also why the state had tried to limit and say, we're not going to have a proliferation of these all over the state. They're going to be X number, or they're going to be targeted for these specific industries within the state.
Well, the other thing, when we entered into the option agreement with LG and Compact Power, I mean, that document does indicate that the council will, you know, consider the filing of an application to establish this Renaissance zone. So, I mean, from the front end of this transaction, we went into it and they went into it with the expectation that the Renaissance zone would be created. Now, at that time, the state had to create a zone for them because one was not in place. That has now taken place. So we're in the process of trying to really complete what our deal was under the option.
Well, it goes back